relationship.
Why is it impossible for daughters to tell their fathers they love them dearly in Shakespearean tragedies or any of these? It seems impossible.
In a situation like this, or just in general?
No, I mean, it seemed to me like this is the same. Lear, for instance, she, you know, there were many ways for her to come out and articulate that she definitely loved her father deeply, but she, you know, that would have been much more convincing than.
You're talking about Cordelia now.
Yeah. And I'm talking about here too. I mean, it's just so. What she says is very beautiful here, but she doesn't touch on. I do love you, and it is so difficult. It's just like, gee, it's so cut and dry. My devotion is no longer to you, it's over here now to my husband. So fuck you, you old bastard.
Well, it doesn't have to be that way.
It's not, but it sounds like it's written that way.
It may sound that way, but no, I wouldn't want it that way. Absolutely not.
Obviously, I'm exaggerating to make a point.
Okay, I would say, well, of course, as far as Cordelia is concerned, the situation is a little bit different there. Here, she's done something. In that case, Cordelia he's asking her to do something.
Yeah.
So then she'd have to say to him, look, Papa, I love you, but it's very difficult for me to express it in front of all these people. Because she does love him, she adores him, you know, and he's being a little unreasonable in his own way, but she could handle it. It's interesting. Desdemona, in Cordelia's situation, and this will help to answer the question, could handle Lear. So it's really a question not so much of the situation, but the people in it. He's not saying in the Shakespeare play necessarily that they can't handle their fathers. He's creating the right woman to not handle the father. Cordelia could take care of Lear. I think that in that opening scene in Lear, Cordelia would be able to talk to him and handle him and humor him, and at the same time charm him without, you know what I mean? Not because we have no play. We would have a play, but that's another story. Here, she's already married him, and she is going to have to be as gentle as possible, for sure, in the opening part of this. There is one other thing, though. This has not been the greatest father.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I understand in terms of that day and age, it's not unusual what he did, but he has retarded her growth. He has not allowed her freedom, and it won't suffice to say that most of them did that. It still makes it a wrong, as far as I'm concerned, you know, in any day and age. In other words, Shakespeare is saying, too, that it was wrong then. That's what he's way ahead of the time.
Yeah.
It's a lack of freedom. Love is not incarceration. Love is not restraint. Not in terms of the other person, where you're not allowing them to do things to realize their own potential. Any restraint on potential in that way that's not love. That's possession. And that's a lot of what this play is. And that's what Othello must have. And that's what Brabantio. So, but I do want her, yes, to be as gentle with him as she can, to let him down as easily. And even in the last part of that, when she finally tells him the facts of life, she doesn't have to be harsh there. It just has to be real. I'm sorry, but this is the way it is. A moment after that, a definite moment, and then nice break. God be with you. I have done. Over. And then there's another nice break there, because he doesn't know what to do, Brabantio. What is he going to do? Is he going to sit down? Is he going to leave the room? Is he going to go and say, well, you know? And he finally says, please, your grace, on to the state of faith. That's the only thing he can say. There's nothing left. Let's get on with what we were talking, the other thing, and this is over with. But he doesn't leave it. He can't let go of it. He says he's going to. Let's get on to state affairs. And then he says, I'd rather to adopt the child than get it. That's bitter. And there's another break. And then he says, come hither, Lord. Where did that come from? So obviously, the man is going in many directions at this point. He doesn't know what to do. He wants to strike out, and he doesn't know how. And finally, he lands on it. But it's not planned. It's not calculated here at all. The man is very emotional here. He's got to be. We must understand for the character, the actor playing Brabantio, he's going to die, and this is the beginning of his death. And he's not that well anyway. Obviously, from the opening scene when he comes in and we say this miserable life and whatever, he's not happy in his life. Why isn't he? He has everything he needs. He has money, position, respect, a loving daughter, and yet in spite of that, his life is spiteful, and so he's obviously feeling the ravages of age. Now, it's over. From this point on, he is a dead man, and he knows. As far as the thing about sounds go, also there are sounds that are just the sounds. We do it in life. Some people more than others. I think everyone does it. Some people have quieter sounds. I mean, they make sounds, we can't hear them. that make sounds inside, but they hear it. There's a music going on in their head. Then there are others who are more vocal. You know, we do this. I think it's wonderful. And these are things to use. And in Shakespeare, it's like, you don't do that sacrosanct, and they tell you that, the directors, especially the Shakespeare, the English directors, not all of them, but a lot of them. And you're not allowed, you gotta get right to the line, you gotta this, but in between the lines, there's the hemming and the hawing and the colors, depending on what's happening. If it's an area that's moving, no, it's got to move. But you still have it, even in those areas, but it's happening more quickly. It can be happening on the line. You get the expression, because in Shakespeare, which is much harder than contemporary theater, often you have to act on the line.
Yeah.
You can't act between the lines, you don't have the time. So you've got to be able to do all of it. You've got to be able to do it if it's necessary on the line. What it means simply acting on the line, as far as I'm concerned, is feeling so quickly that it's concomitant with what's happening in terms of the words. You got the feeling and the line and it together, and one grows on the other. It builds on it. I hear you give thee. Give is a key word there, underlined, and with all my heart should be emphasized. This is a little tricky. Then there's which comes right after. In other words, I hear to give thee that with all my heart, which. The which comes right away. There's a slight break. But thou hast already. In other words, it's a qualification line. But thou hast already. Break. With all my heart emphasized, I would. Now, you can play it in a very technical, pointed way, because that's what he's doing. Always look for areas that are complex, where you can justify the character instructing us. He's telling us what he's doing. It's very technical, and he's playing it that way. Do it. Use it. Just makes it easier, The same with the poetry. As I mentioned the other day, there are times like when we're coming into an area like that. So he is allowed the liberty of being pithy, of being poetic. You see, otherwise the line, that's like being in school again. I never saw a purple cow, I never hoped to see one, and I can tell you, I'd rather see than be one. I guess we've all heard that, right? I mean, come on. But he can do it here. Otherwise, when we get into the speech that the Duke has, it sounds so trite. Well, in a way, it is kind of trite. But the thing is, do we need this? But he'll earn it if we will allow him if he tells us he's going to do it.
Yeah.
Now, then Brabantio has a response to that, and he does the same thing. In other words, okay, well, now let me tell you. So all this poetry here, all these rhymes, all these couplets will be justified. I like to break Beth. The sisters have a lot of them together. Round about the culvert go. What school child has not heard that? And yet there are ways to do it where you can break the poetry without losing it. Break it so that the lines are real. In other words, so that you can, it took hours, it took a week to get that scene down. But we finally got it. Where you break the poetry so that it's discovering. They're actually discovering the poetry, even on lines like that. It's even possible. If you can do it with that, you can do it with anything Shakespeare.
I have to go.
Oh, okay. If there's anything important, I'll have it on the tape. I'll be out of here. They're coming in too.
They're coming in too, so you're fine till then.
I'd rather to adopt the child than get it. Bigger, of course, obviously. Right. And then all of a sudden he calls Othello. He tells him to come hither. It comes out of him, out of his emotion. He has no control. And it's like on the spur of the moment. It's not planned. Otherwise, it looks like he's just going to go into that. He doesn't plan that. In other words, take the scene moment to moment. And when he said, God be with you, I have done. Over. I don't want to discuss it anymore. Right. And then he looks at the Duke, pleasing the grace on to the state affairs, and then there's an addendum to that, but he's still in that. He says, I had rather to, this is his final note on it, I had rather to adopt the child than get it. I had rather to adopt the child. It wouldn't work as an aside because there'd be a break that everybody would be comfortable. And they would have to react to it, or they would appear to be reacting to it. The audience would never know that, So I'll never put it in an aside unless I feel that that he wants. I've seen some that are questioning. I didn't know. War comes purely out of an uncontrolled emotion. In other words, we know he's furious, he's bitter, it's ugly, but he's got it under control. Apparently, God be with you, and done, pleasing your grace, unto the state affairs, and rather adopt the child and get it. And then all of a sudden, he turns around, he says, come hither more. Now, you're going to have to earn that. And that's only going to come in, otherwise it'll be strictly technical. You have the line, fine. You turn to him and come, and you'd be amazed when they do the scene in this area. That's the way they'll put it all together. Come hither more, it's all a given, I'm going to tell. Oh no, it comes out of the moment. And then he says, at the end of this, I have done, my lord. Now he is through. There's nothing more. I mean, if the Duke didn't come in with this, Brabantio would truly be quiet and let them get back to the thing about Cyprus. There has to come a point where this is over. And it is over now. So what happens? The Duke won't let go. Now he comes in and says, wait a minute. I'm going to add something here. We don't need this. Brabantio does not need this. So it's got to be clear what's happening here. It's all discovery. So then when the Duke comes in, Brabantio, of course, is very antagonistic. You don't fool with a wounded animal, and that's what this guy is, and badly wounded. You leave him alone. He said, enough, done, I've got it all, it's done. And he goes, so the Duke is not omnipotent or whatever. He makes mistakes too, he's a human being. But he's trying to play. Hold it a second. Let me speak like yourself. Take a little longer after he's through. Okay. Just a moment there. What are you going to do? And it'll be a moment of respect, and you see him, he's so isolated and so bitter. And then we've got to ask, too, something. We know he's going to placate him, try to cheer him up a little bit or whatever, make the best. But also, is maybe another reason why he's doing this? I mean, is he just doing this to help Brabantio? Let's be really honest about this. I'm looking for more motivation behind all this, personal things. Because after all, he has been very politic. And he's done the right thing. The country comes first over a romantic situation. But we all know, he knows, Brabantio knows, the senators know, that in normal circumstances, they don't marry out of class, and certainly not to a foreigner. Doesn't matter what color he is, they just don't do it. And in that sense alone, the marriage is tenuous. And if Othello was not who he is, if this was any other situation, the marriage would be an oath. No question about it. Forget the law. Screw the law. They make their own law, for God's sake. They would do it, but it is in the law anyway. So it's awkward for him. He's got to cover for himself, so he's trying to, you see what I mean? Maybe a little guilt here, a little bit of a trip here of guilt. And he's got that could motivate him a little more, because he feels awkward about himself here, just a little bit, just adds a little more of a color. Others in the room, you don't really want, it's just to him. So it can be very quiet. Play it against the obvious. The tendency in these kind of poetic lines is to make them more pronounced. No, do just the opposite. Make it as real and as prose-like, excuse the expression, as possible. Cut into the poetry. Don't ring it. And it'll make him look less. I don't want him to lose strength here. I want to keep him. You're looking out for his best. You know how bad he feels. Try to explain to him that it'll be better if he does not respond that way. Throw it off and get on with your life. Isn't that what he's saying? Get on with your life, whatever you have left of it.
So the fact that each one of these other lines rhymes with each other makes no difference?
You mean his or Brabantio?
The Duke's.
The rest? Well, how do you mean?
Little ditty. I mean, in all this, the poetry, all this independent, gone on.
Right.
Takes, makes, deep, grief.
Yeah.
Don't hit that.
Don't hit it. It'll hit itself. It will hit itself. You know what I mean?
But he's trying to make rhymes here.
No, maxims. Sentences, he calls them. That's the term they use, which is a maxim. And they happen to come out as rhymes because they're more pointed that way in the reading. But when you deliver a maxim, when you say a maxim, in a play, a dramatic play, not in a maxim play, if you know what I mean, you want to make it, in a situation like this, which is very emotional, as real as possible, so that it does not sound pontifical. It doesn't sound like an announcement. We want to make it very personal, which is what it would be, to him, the Duke, to Brabantio. And if you're going to focus this on Brabantio and forget about the rest of the room as much as possible, obviously it's going to have to be delivered more personally. And the rest will take care of itself. The poetry will take care of itself. What we don't want is him to pronounce the poetry. No, it's in there. He'll hear it. It's automatic. There can be run-up. Oh, here's one in this speech. Okay, if you have, it can be either way. I think I gave it to you as a break. So let's say we do it as a break. To mourn a mischief that is past and gone, and we have antithesis here. We have to mourn a mischief that is past and gone is the next way to draw new mischief on. Right. Okay, we break, there is a break, but we can also break the poetry a little bit, because it's to mourn a mischief that is past and gone is the next way to draw new mischief on. Now, new mischief is being hit. It should be hit. It makes sense. You're making the point stronger, and you're softening the poetry. You see what I mean? You're not losing it, though. You're not losing it, but you're softening it. The English, what they tend to do is always on the money, on the line, on the poetry. To mourn a mischief that is past and gone is the next way to draw new mischief on. And you can hear the ons, reverberating. No, that's not human. And it takes away from what's happening here. Now, on the other hand, you could also do with that line, you can have the same highlight, but you could run it together. And it could be, to mourn a mischief that is past and gone is the next way to draw new mischief on. It's another way. I prefer the break, but it could be. But another one that Brabantio has in the next speech, well, no, there is a break there. I'm thinking of one where we can run it together. But words are words. I never yet did hear that the bruised heart was pierced through the ear. Now, there's no break after here. Normally with the poetry there would be. I don't want to break there. However, what you can do to not lose the poetry or lose only, because you don't want to lose, like your point is the poetry helps to emphasize the point. So you can have it all. What you can do is just take here and just stretch it, as you're saying, without stopping. So, but words are words. Slight break there. But words are words. I never yet did hear that the bruised heart was pierced through the ear. Now that's a more natural speech, and yet you've got the benefit of the poetry. So the idea is to try to get all of it, if you can, as much as, the hardest one is round about the cauldron go. You get through that one, you can get through anything, Okay, so let's go back, and you'll hear it in the poetry there. Patience or injury a mockery makes. Patience or injury a mockery makes. Got to play with it and see which, because it can go either way, but see which sounds better in terms of what's happening. But he robs himself. Himself is emphasized, and just a note, at the end there, make sure there's a period there. That we don't get the sense that that we don't get the sense that Brabantio is cutting in there. Right. It could be. So he says, he robs himself, he wraps it all up here in that last line. But it's got to really sound like a wrap-up. So there's a moment there, isolate that. This is everything I'm saying comes down to this last line. He robs himself that spends a boot his end of the point. That's all. Now, there's a second. He looks at it. There could be a moment here. I don't think he would jump right in, Brabantio. He looks at him like, oh, you. Oh, shit. You. This is such bull. We know each other. Who are you? Who are you to tell me this? You know better. And then it starts off very strong. I mean, the first point he makes is it's a sarcasm. It's just reeking of it. So what stronger thing could he say than what's happening now? Think about the Turks. Right. That's the most dangerous thing to this country, to the city now. And that's what he uses right at the beginning. So let the Turk of Cyprus us beguile. He hit him with this. We lose it not so long as we can smile. And then he gets into, that's current, and now he gets into, the second part, he bears the sentence, well, that nothing bears, we're talking now about your average person who is not involved emotionally in conflict. I don't know when the hell that is, but you know what I mean. And so we're always involved, we're always heading toward death, so I guess that's some kind of conflict that will be resolved someday. So in other words, but that's not him. So he's differentiating between his point here is the average person, that's fine for. That's how he starts off. That's fine to say that, to read a book and read a book on philosophy, Descartes, whoever the hell it is, and fine, good. And if you are in a middling mood where you can take it in objectively and you're not influenced by emotional currents at that moment in time in your life, you can learn from it, But when you're directly involved in a situation, the philosophy can just go out the window. It's very easy to say all that. And he says that in the next line. That's when he says that here's the difference. But he bears both the sentence and the sorrow, that to pay grief must the poor patience follow. In other words, in order to pay the grief, in order to handle the situation, he's going to have to draw on patience, poor patience, because who can be up to such a situation to lose a daughter like this? And keep in mind one thing throughout the whole speech. You're talking to a guy who also has a daughter. You're talking to a guy who, if he was in this situation, you and he know damn well that he would never do this. That he would never allow his son of a bitch to go off with his daughter. You know what I mean? So you're talking to him, not to anyone else here. You're making it very clear that this is bullshit, and you know it's bullshit. And I'm willing to let it drop. You're the one that won't let it drop. So okay. You know, he didn't fight with the Duke. He hasn't said anything to the Duke yet. That is not nice. He's just angry. But now he's interfering? Okay, you're going to let him have it. Because I brought up the point about his daughter, and now you're bringing up the point about, fine, his daughter in this situation, not just in general. Yeah, which makes it more difficult. This situation is more highlighted now. Interesting situation. The Duke would, I think, he's different than Brabantio as a person in the sense that he's more well balanced. We get that sense. He's able to adjust better to things. So, yeah, more than that's his job. Obviously, he does it very well. So what I think he would do. Excuse me?
He'd let Othello go off to the wars, and then he'd have the marriage annul while Othello was fighting, and he comes back, and everything's cool.
Yeah, but he'd begin the process. In other words, he would use him for what he needs, so he wouldn't let it interfere in any way, and then he'd start to put the things into position to play. And then it might take a year or 6 months or whatever it was, and then when the thing was over, and he would do it, though, I think, in such a way where it wouldn't hurt Othello. I mean, he wouldn't just work behind his back, and then Othello comes back from Cyprus, and all of a sudden, oh, it's no more marriage. Because then he'd lose Othello, and maybe you don't want to lose Othello. So I think he would try to retain him, but do it in such a way where maybe it didn't look like he did.
Oh, I don't think so. I think he'd use Othello for this war, but Othello's overstepped his bounds if he tried to marry the Duke's.
Oh, yes.
He would utilize him for this battle, and then he'd get somebody else, be it Montano, whether he,
Maybe. It's possible. I'd say he would try to, but let's say, we don't know that. Right now, they don't have anyone. I mean, in a tough situation. I don't mean just in a battle. So, there's no question, though, yes, that if he had someone, Lucia, somebody like that, who was as good as Othello, or almost as good, on the future. And there's no question about one thing, he would put the word out. If there wasn't anyone, he would definitely put the word out. Look, we've got money set aside. This is a rich state, Venetian. We've got money set aside. I want you to get Michael Jordan. You know, and he's available, bring him in. And then when that son of a bitch comes back, he's gone. You know what I'm saying. In other words, it's got to be other generals around. They got a price. Because these guys are all hired.
Right.
So they'll find someone. But it may take a while. So ultimately, yes, he'll find. It's a question of whether they have the money, and they do have it. And in a sense, he's not being a hypocrite. If you're playing the role of the Duke, you got to rationalize it.
Otherwise, the Duke is thinking that, having that thought process.
What he's really saying is part of that. He's saying what comes first is the welfare of us, all of us. And if it was his own daughter, that would still come first. But the difference is, being the Duke, he is in a position to play the game. In other words, he can continue the game after he makes the first decision. Brabantio really can't. No, he can't. It's over. Once the Duke and the Senate approves this, there's no way they can annul that marriage anymore. Who's going to annul it? Unless something happens within the marriage, between the two of them, that's different. But assuming they're happy or whatever, it's done. It's a given. It's over. So, yeah. But what I'm saying is that the Duke would then, he would maneuver. He'd use his position to maneuver, but he can rationalize this to feel better for himself here. And that is to say that right now, the right thing to do is what I am doing. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, and anything that comes after, well, if you want to make an appeal about this later and whatever, that's your prerogative. That's always a possibility. But right now, this is the correct thing, and it is. Mm-hmm. Lives are at stake. And we don't have time. It isn't like we have a few days to talk about this. That's been established. We got to get out now. So we can't debate this even for one more day or even for another hour. And, so the Duke has a job to do. He has been hired, he's been elected to do a job, and that is to protect the state and take care of the citizens as best as possible. And in effect, that's what he is doing here. He is honoring his highest responsibility. So that should make you feel pretty good as the actor playing the part, because that's what I'm concerned with. I want you to know what's happening in the overview, but I want you to know where are you coming from. Otherwise, you can be so overswept by other things that you can feel weakened by it. You know, I feel like such a son of a bitch when I'm doing it. No, you should feel fully just. I humbly, the last line I mentioned the other day, then he'd move away. You don't have to do it now. But just so you get the idea, it'll help in terms of what's happening. He crosses away. Yeah. So he goes away, he isolates himself, and he stands there. And there's a moment there, and there's got to be a response to that from the there's just one thing. There's a line. Wait, he'll cross away. I said the other day, cross away on that line. He'll cross away a line earlier. He'll cross away on. It sounds like we're blocking the show, but there's a reason. I'm doing this to highlight the meaning of these words. He'll move away on I never yet did hear that the bruised heart was pierced through the ear. That's the line he would move away from him on. He moves away from him, and then he stops. And there's a pause. In other words, now he's waiting. He's waiting for the Duke to go on with the rest of the thing about Cyprus. He doesn't. And he realizes he doesn't. So then he says, after the pause, when he sees the Duke is not responding to what he wants him to do, he says, for God's sake, that would be the
God's sake, I humbly beseech you, beseech the affairs of state.
So there has to be subtext there. There has to be. There's a moment, a pause. He said it. It's over. He says, that I never yet did hear that the bruised heart was pierced through the ear. And he's moved away. He's there. And then there's the pause. And then, for God's sake, what the hell are you doing? I humbly beseech you, proceed to the affairs of state. And then there's another pause. And then, of course, that's enough. That will also, by doing it that way, it's perfectly right for Brabantio, of course, but it also helps the Duke. Believe it actually helps him, because it ends on a very definite note. He is irreconcilable. Because if it landed on a softer note, then the Duke could still be it could sound so awkward and rude for him to break away and not try a little more. It's got to be so clear that it's over. It's a done deal to everyone. So all the Duke can do is look at him for a moment, there's a pause, maybe shake his head as if, it's wrong, but for you, what you're doing, but okay, and then turn back to him, Othello, that is. Okay, hold on a second there. This whole speech here is, we see him at his best. The Duke has created a very good impression so far, I would say overall. He's handled things well. It's a difficult situation. I mean, everything. But now we see him in his own element. The only problems now are the Turks, and so this is what he does every day. So he gives a good speech. He's like Mario Cuomo. Boy, he knows how to deliver a speech. I mean it. It's the best example I can think of. The man is superb, brilliant. So every word, he does it inflected, it's colored, and he does it purposely, but it's real. It's clear. It rings. So the breaks with him, when I can give you breaks with him, you really play them. Because actually, if you think about it, Othello does not know this yet. He knows that on the horizon there's danger in there. We don't know. But until he knows it, he's not going to be called. Now, he knows he's been called tonight, so he knows things have happened, but still the word hasn't been given yet. Not officially. To him.
A first for Othello.
Yeah, it's a first for him, really. That it's now. It's not tomorrow. Because Othello, is going to tell him how urgent it is, too. Okay, so we mustn't lose, what I'm saying is, the spontaneity, the discovery. Otherwise, all this is rehashing. The audience has already found this out 14 times over with the Turks. Here we go again. We got to tell the film. And there's always a problem in Shakespeare. You'll find often, like at Cyprus, you get 4 versions of the fact that the Turks are drowned. First, you get a messenger comes, then another guy comes, then Cassio comes. And as if all that isn't enough, Othello comes, and that's 6 pages later, and he says, "News, friends, the Turks are drowned." The audience is going, "Oh, Christ." He says, I know. Isn't there anything else in this play? And so what we've got to find in areas like that, aside from some clever editing, which sometimes you do need, absolutely, but not here, is that it is discovery. And here it is. It's for Othello's sake. So when the Duke talks to him, he's talking to someone who doesn't know. So it's going to bring out of him the best. It's new, it's discovery. And okay, so he says, but then he says, in effect, what he's saying in this speech, as he gets into the fact, is that Montano is a nice guy. but he only weighs 148 pounds and you weigh 220, so I think we'll send you over instead. You're both good fighters, but he's only a welterweight, you know. But he does it in such a way where he doesn't insult anyone. I mean, you know, Montano's the governor of the island. Why not send troops over and let him be in charge? You know, well, of course not. That's why there's any Othello. But there's a way to do it. And he says, yet opinion. He says a subject of most allowed sufficiency. Montano's a good guy, but, 147 pounds. So he says, but yet opinion, and now in parenthesis, a sovereign mistress of effects. Now, sovereign, a supreme mistress. So, general opinion about you is that's the story. So, sovereign is highlighted, throws a more safer voice on you. That way it'll be softened in terms of Montano. We don't want to be rude, ever. So, yet opinion, sovereign mistress of effects, throws a more safer. In other words, it's safe with Montano, but it's more safe with you. I just want you to get these colors, and you'll see where he's coming from. It'll also tell you if you were playing the Duke, the role, you'd get all kinds of ideas of what kind of person this is and how to handle him in general. Now, stubborn and boisterous, I also would put an S there for a substitute word that you would use when you're working on it. Stubborn being dangerous and boisterous being violent. Because stubborn and boisterous just don't ring. If you say violent, in other words, your new fortune with this more violent and dangerous expedition, well, but stubborn and boisterous, that sounds like an irritant. No, that won't work. But once you get that color in from the real words, it'll carry over into those two words. I would also use a substitute for a sovereign. And so Othello here, there's just a moment after the Duke's line, before he responds. I mean, he's just a second. And then, of course, and finally, it's like air, it's like oxygen for him. And we've got to see this in the sense that, because everything has been so far about Desdemona and Othello, and we've got all this poetry and this incredible match between the two of them, and the love and the stories. What we've got to see here is something that goes beyond that, a greater love. So we've got to see a response that we've not seen in the whole scene yet, another kind of a color.
There's passion here.
Yeah, that's right. Now, not to take away from the other, but this is enough so that when she sees it, Desdemona has never seen him respond to the moment. She's heard it in retrospect when he told the adventures, and most of that was about how what happened to him and what it meant to him. But now, for the first time, this is a new first, because I didn't have this in before. It's a first for her to discover, to hear his response to battle in the sense of when it's actually happening. And it is one of, oh God, it's everything I live for. And that's intimidating. I mean, in terms of a relationship, if it means that much. It's intimidating, not necessarily because of the way he feels, but the fact that his work by nature makes him leave her. So the passion of his life is somewhere else. If it was at home and he could do it in their house or something, wonderful. If he could do this work here, but that isn't the case. By very nature, it's going to be in foreign lands, or lands that they're protected from foreigners. And that's a problem. It's an irreconcilable problem, actually, for anyone. But for a woman like this, without an experience, it's an impossible situation. Anyone viewing this who doesn't know the show and who has lived life and who just is up to the play where we are now could pretty much tell you this relationship can't go to work. And it doesn't mean it shouldn't. I'm just saying it won't. More has to be done. There has to be more education, and it has to be on both sides, not just Desdemona. Othello has so much growing to do, and we're going to find that out as the play progresses. Okay, just to note, remember I mentioned about half lines or very short lines, and then others to follow after. I think just a clue here. Why, at her father's, I will not have it so, nor I. You see what I'm driving? They're all brief half lines, and then it goes in. It gives you a clue as to timing. And, we know that she, Desdemona, has just decided now to go off with him. She realized it's only now that she knows it. So what you got to ask is, where is she emotionally here? I mean, how stable is this? She's discovering things. She doesn't know how to. Even if she had a chance to work this out in her head, it would be so difficult to explain this to the Duke. How do you say this to the Duke? She's asking something that's not you don't do. It's unheard of. So all that is happening now, right now. So there's going to be struggle within the lines. There's going to be an awkward break there. In other words,
really quick again?
yeah.
Okay.
So there'll be a break after by put my father in his patience by being in his eye. We've taken care of that. Now there's a moment there before she addresses the Jew. It's awkward, and there could be an awkward moment after the first 3 words. There's awkwardness, and then she there's certain diffidence, which she'll come out of as she gets into it. Most gracious Jew, she gets his attention. And then she says there's a lot of breaks here, to my unfolding, lend your prosperous ear. And then she kind of colors it, and let me find a charter in your voice. She's trying to find the words to, And then when she gets into the speech, the next one, it's easier, but it kind of builds as she goes along. So go back, the tenseness, the insecurity, and in that speech,
You just speak it. You can feel it. It's hard.
you're asking for almost the impossible.
Right.
And she knows it.
Right.
And yet it'll be terrible without it, isn't it? But not for a moment that she assumes it's going to happen.
No.
Now, how can she? So what I'm saying is that whole speech, when she says, what would you, Desdemona? Okay, she's got his attention. It's very nice. Go ahead. You want to talk. You want this thing. You want to tell me. Obviously, go ahead. Now, she's going to tell him. But it's all uphill.
Right.
And that's what she's got to feel. What we don't want from Desdemona, and what you'll almost always get here, is that she comes out and she tells him.
No.
In effect, I love him so much, I proved it, and I can't live without him, and so let's go. I want you to know. I mean, this line there's been reams about this line in terms of what it means. It means that he's impotent. It means he doesn't want sex. It means that he's this, he's that, and it gets into all kinds of. Not to comply. In other words, nor to respond to the heat.
Yeah,
Nor to respond to the young effects. In my defunct. In other words, it's not. It's elliptical. You have to understand that. It's not all written out here. But he's saying, in my delay. In other words, he's not going to comply with heat. And the young effects will not influence him in his delay. And yet proper.
So the delay goes to satisfaction.
Yes.
Not
yes.
young effects. Okay.
Young effects.
Okay.
My delay.
Now I
And
see.
there's no line there.
Okay.
See, the way they have it, they have a dash. Forget that.
Okay.
That's
Because otherwise, in me delay, it's like because of my maturity, these young effects, I can delay them. It's
right.
not
No,
my
it's in my delay, meaning it has been delayed by you.
satisfaction. So if it goes to
the,
satisfaction.
yeah.
Okay.
So in my delay, and yet it's also proper. So in other words, my satisfaction has been delayed, but it is proper. The decision to go with him, the need to go with him is now. And it happens on that speech. It's like discovery. It's happening. And she realizes it, and it's like now she has to make an appeal to the Duke, and it's urgent, and her mind is racing. Why that I did love them more? Yeah. A lot of times, it's a choice. I mean, they have a choice. It isn't just arbitrary. You look, you have a few. There's the quarto and the folio. You have sometimes 3 or 4 choices. I guess what you're really asking is why would they make that choice? It's not one they just came up at the top of their heads. What I find is often a lot of the bad choices, what I call bad, are because these are not theater people. And it can read well on the page, but it does not play in terms of the character. And it's when you're doing the character, either from the director's point of view or the actor's point of view, and they say, wait a minute, wait, that doesn't make any sense if I say that, And now it can be done that way. I want to be fair. You could say that I did love them more to live with him. People do that all the time in situations like that. But obviously, it's much stronger and more imminent if it's that I do love them more now, not then. And the indication are I loved him then, and this is what was happening then. I spent weeks editing this before we ever did it. I'm talking about making choices, because there's a lot more than we have now. I don't want to go into all of that, because there were odds and ends of words, the ones I consider important. My heart subdued even to the very quality of my Lord. I saw Othello's visage in his mind. That can also be interpreted in terms of the color, because dark was very much, it was not attractive to be a brunette then, it was to be fair. And the idea of being darker, whether it be darker hair or certainly darker skin, was not considered to be something beautiful. Okay. And it's not something, it's interesting. It can be interpreted that way. It doesn't make her a racist. It makes her influenced by environment. It's something very natural. You grow up with that kind of thing. It's kind of unfortunate in a way to use it, but it does happen. So it can be interpreted that way too. There's a few areas. Now, to some people, it'll be a left-handed compliment. It depends on where you're coming from. In that day and age, though, it's not. We must understand. And I like that because it makes her more human in a way. It makes her a victim of what's happening around her. In a way, even though she's certainly not a racist or anything like that, but she too is influenced by these things. And she's saying that he's so beautiful inside that I got through the thing with the color. That didn't, as unattractive as it is. It's like a given. It is unattractive. They mention it throughout the play. It's mentioned in other areas, regardless of him. Iago uses it when they arrive at Cyprus, when he gets into his poetry there, and he mentions about the white and the black. The white being a person, but also being a light person, a fair person. And always the white, the W-I-G-H-T, or it's a trick on words, always means the intelligent person, the better person, the good person, and the dark is always the one who does not have the higher morals, does not have the intelligence, has the illegitimate child. So in other words, I'm going to give myself to his honors and his valiant parts, which is his work. And that's going to be my life now. And that will lead us very naturally into the next area, which is let me go with it, because that's my life, not here. It's to show that it goes so deep, the love, and she's trying to show why it's so layered. In other words, it had to overcome obstacles.
Right.
And obviously, the more obstacles it has to overcome, the deeper it would appear to be. Because she even has that line, my downright violence and storm of fortunes may trumpet to the world. So I said to hell with everything. I went against everything, family, friends, background, color, everything. And that makes it much more meaning. She's expressing her love. We're getting each of their loves. We're seeing what his love is like, where it's come. Well, we'll see some more in this next area we just did. And we're seeing where she's coming. It's the beginning of the proof. Because I mentioned last week that, the male, female, he's on top, she's on top, and I didn't mean any other reference or stuff. And at this point in the relationship, he's on top. But when they arrive at Cyprus, she's on top. Now, she is never on top of the relationship consciously, in the sense of, well, and this is very unusual, there are very few people like this, either in theater, in plays, or in real life, who aren't aware of who's on top, even as nice as they may be, and don't use it with it, okay? She's not that way. I'm not trying to make her into a goddess, but she isn't that way. So she's not aware of that. She doesn't balance it, well, I'm on top today, I have the stronger. It doesn't work that way with her, but we have to know. And at this point in time, we have to ask the question, what is the difference in their loves, her to him and he to her, and whose is really stronger and richer? And I think that it's occurring to her. I think she knows it all along, but she certainly knows here with what's happening in the scene, that his word comes before everything else. So yes, it's a way of absolutely of saying to him, you see, I'm ready to go with you. That gives you more of an inkling of how I feel about you. Granville Barker with his thing about, it's not important what happened in between, don't bother me with what happened in between, just do the bloody scene. I understand how he feels. And there is a point in rehearsal, you've worked and worked and talked and done it over and over, and then you do it. And if you can't do it that well, you're stuck with it, because that's it. You realize, well, he's not as good as I thought he was, but I got it, we'll make the best of it, but you got to do it. But in the meantime, when you're working on it, like we are now, and you're building it, you want to know we want to know what happened in those 2 weeks on the boat coming over. Very important. And we have a lot of things that help explain what happened at Cyprus, because there is a time element in this play, and there is the thing of the two clocks, the real clock and the theatrical clock. Shakespeare uses it in all his plays, but he uses it here a lot. The way I work, I will rationalize, yes, I'll tell you this, I will rationalize anything. So what I do it all the time. Maybe that's why I'm a director, So I can rationalize anything. They're trying to get crazy, but I do it automatically. I guess because I do it in my work all the time. Now, it's not a game, it's dead serious. So if I have to deal with this play, and I've had to deal with it, and the time element, and I have the time element worked out. As we go along, I'm giving it to you. I didn't give you the whole time element for the whole play. I assume you're writing it down and we will review it. But there is a way to make the play work time-wise without getting screwed up by the clock, where we can have a real clock going. And I don't know from imaginary clocks. I'm sorry. It's pretty hard to take on stage an imaginary clock. So I think it's the director's job in a situation like this to make it as real as possible, so every moment is accounted for. And those moments off stage, obviously, in a play like this where you're dealing with those two clocks, is so important, because you can find answers to Bianca. Bianca is one of the most puzzling things in the whole play. She comes out and says, I haven't seen you in a certain period of time, yet she lives on Cyprus. They just arrived on Cyprus. She saw him a week ago. How could she have seen him a week ago if she lives on Cyprus? Wow. We can't figure that one out? Come on. Who says she lives on Cyprus? I don't know anyone. Who says she's a prostitute? Iago does. Well, I guess this must be, Yeah, right, Iago. It's interesting. And again, they fall into that trap. When they write about the play, the scholars, they'll say she's a prostitute because all we know about her is from him, or from Cassio. Because he cheapens her, because she's so crazy about him and whatever. But we have to ask ourselves, how does she act when she's on? What does she say? What does she do? Does she have any depth to her? And we come up with our own answers, other than what Iago told. We will build on this, by the way. I mean, we're going to add more and more as we go along. And we could have gone into it totally right at the start with all of the people, the major characters. I haven't done that with Iago either, because as we hit Iago now and this Rodrigo thing, there's going to be more about it. But it is very important that you have a big head start, because otherwise it's like, oh, I didn't know that before we get into this scene now. I had no idea. No, we've got to go with our eyes open. And the rest of the things we're talking about now are key. And there's no question that when she looks at him, I don't want to get into this too much now because we're jumping ahead, but when she looks at him in scenes that are coming up, in the handkerchief scene, and in the brothel scene we did there, it is obvious in everything that he's doing where he's coming from. He doesn't say it in so many words, but he does say it in effect by his body language, and even by his words. In the brothel scene, he calls her a whore. How many times? I mean, he couldn't be more blatant. She is not a fool. She's not stupid. If she was stupid, we could say, well, she doesn't know what's going on because she has something running in her head. Obviously, she does. More than that, she's a very intelligent girl. So what's the problem? The problem is the self-will has a lot to do with it. Yes, she has an image of him, and she will let nothing change that image. So she looks at him. She's seeing Z, but she refuses. But to her eyes, it's got to be A. But she knows better. And actually, so does he, because he looks at her and he sees innocence. And this is what drives him so insane. Because she is innocent, she's acting innocent because she's innocent. He thinks she's acting innocent because she's pretending. And so he's thinking to himself, my God, here's a woman who's guilty, and she's able to act so innocent. That makes her so disgusting and so low. I mean, to be able to carry it off so well. And of course, she's carrying it off beautifully because she's sincere.
So that everything we ever had could be a lie.
In terms of him.
Everything from the first word you said.
Of course, exactly, yeah.
He's letting his image of her change when it really hasn't changed, and she won't let her image of him change when it has.
For the worse.
Yeah.
So she's retaining the beautiful image, and he's going over to a horrible, ugly image. Right. But there are other reasons for this too with him. That's what I'm trying to get into the relationship now. This relationship is very tenuous right from the start because they have so little in common. I'm not saying you can't work. Under ideal circumstances, maybe over the years it could. Certainly it's possible. It's a question of luck, and it's a question of a number of things. I don't know. The only way this relationship could work is if they had a lot of time together, and his work does not allow that. And so I don't see how it would ever work. I don't think personally it will work. Because if we say it's going to work, we're sure it's going to work, then we have to say that Iago is the catalyst. Now, in terms of writing, he's the catalyst. He's, in a matter of speaking, he makes this thing happen now, but he doesn't create the problem in Othello. All he does is give Othello the space to be aware of what he is. He does that with all the characters, and remember that. That's his way of working. He finds out where people are coming from, and then he lets them be what they are. If we didn't have Iago, we'd have no play, really, in terms of, I don't mean just in terms of what happens there, but also in terms of all the characters. We never find out about Cassio, and how petty he is, and how influenced he is by what people think of him. And that's an overriding thing with Cassio. That's why Cassio gets drunk. He obviously, it's an allergen. The alcohol. It affects his body, and he's allergic to it, obviously. And he knows this, and yet he lets himself get drunk. Why? Because he has to do what others do, to go along with it. But why does that happen? Because of Iago. He brings all this out, Iago. So he brings out the real people. Now we have to ask, is he really the villain here? I wonder. Is that a villain? Someone? I mean, he's sadistic and he's evil. Oh, I don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But is he the one who's responsible for this? It's like the German people saying today, and have said for years, God help us, we must never have another Hitler. So we'll make sure in terms of our government, etc., that someone, no one individual can come to power, because who knows what he'll turn out to be. Well, isn't that interesting? So what are they afraid of? I mean, isn't it the people who determine this and not the leader? You see what I'm driving at? That they're afraid that something in them will come out in someone else. Isn't that what it's all about? And that's what Iago would have had a field day in Germany. He would have gotten out of it. He'd be over here. Exactly. And the thing that makes it theatrical, so it's not just a slice of life, is that he has things going for him.
Yeah.
That, aside from the fact that he's a brilliant actor, and we'll use that as we go through the play, have a field day. That's why it's a wonderful part for that reason, I think, more than anything. Not because it's showy, not because, oh, look at me, I got all these lines, and I got and he makes everyone look like an ass.
Yeah.
What's more fun than that? I mean, you're behind him, and you're going like this, and doing all sorts of ridiculous, and people laugh, and they don't know it's such a funny thing. That's not, the thing that makes this role work is the motivation. He's obsessed, Iago is as driven as Othello is. It's not the way it's done, but that's what, you have that, and then you got a pairing of these two, my God. Then the whole play just goes off. It's not entertainment, it's frightening. And so he makes it more theatrical, Iago, because he compresses the time out of it. You know what I mean? He's work. But all these things would play themselves out over a period of time. Over Rodrigo, I don't know what would save Rodrigo. He's a blithering idiot. I mean, and but there's more to him than that, because it's easy to say that he manipulates him and he's a blithering idiot. But wait a minute, what about Rodrigo? He professes love for Desdemona, and yet she gets married, and now he convinces him in this area, in the one coming up, that he should continue to pursue this married woman, and now pretty soon it just becomes having an affair with her, having her body, because he says to him constantly, you'll have her tomorrow night, you'll have her this, you'll have her that. And so what does he really want, Rodrigo? Is it really love he's talking about? He never even met her. He's seen her from afar. He sends her gifts, most of which never get there, because Iago, he says to let her have your voice, touch with me, have an idea. It's obvious by the way he words this that he didn't know, he didn't expect this. He's taken aback. And yes, his love for her, or his awareness of her love, is a little bit more. He says at the beginning, let her have your voice. I beg you not to please the palate of my appetite. In other words, I'm not a child. I can control my emotions. I'll do my job. But the free and bounteous through her mind. And heaven defend your good soul that you think I will your serious and great business scant when she is with me. Okay, why does he say anything else? I don't see anything coming up that we need. Unless it's great poetry, it's okay, I know, but there's enough. He can write other great poetry, doesn't he? Why does he put this in? Why is this here? No. When light-winged toys, feathered Cupid, etc., ad infinitum ad nauseam, my speculative and office instruments, that my discourse crop and taint my business, let huswives make a skillet of my hell, and all in thine, so that's sentence, base, and base adversities make head against my estimation. Against my estimation. What people think of me, that's interesting. That seems to be the most important thing. But what I'm driving at is, it's a very macho thing we have here. It's very typical. There's an audience here, and he wants to make it clear to everyone my work comes first. And no woman is going to, just anybody may think. So in other words, he's overselling. We don't need all this excess. And he's overcompensating. And it's also downright rude. If you think about what he is saying here, At the end, I'm talking about the last part. The other part is officious, it's workmanlike, it's objective. But now it's subjective, this last part. He's not achieving any objective anymore. I mean, not the original objective. Now it's a petty kind of objective. It's appearance kind of objective. But by the way, don't misunderstand. When I say somebody's becoming subjective in an area and has lost track of their objective, I don't mean that they're not doing something that they're striving for. But it's subjective. It's not something that's going to be a hypertrophy. It's going to be defeating ultimately. We all do it. Iago will do it, and Othello does it often. So that should be clear, that it's appearance here. And he wants everyone to know that she comes second, the work comes first. And now, how does she respond to that? She doesn't have any lines here. As a matter of fact, she doesn't have any more lines than sin. So all we've got are her inner responses. But you see how important it is. And the next time that she is on is the arrival at Cyprus. And this has to worry her. Oh, if she's not worried already, she's got to be worried when she hears this. In other words, from her point of view, he doesn't understand me. So it's not that son of a bitch for saying those things, but rather he doesn't understand me. I've got a ways to go. So that's going to spur her to work harder now. We need those things. It's not lines. It can be other people's lines that will spur. So when she comes in, when the actress comes in the next time in Cyprus, she's got things going for her. She's concerned. Yes, she hasn't seen him. The ship isn't in the harbor when she comes to see Cassio, and she's worried. But also on the way over, it's been a week, because it made very good time the ship. It caught up to Othello's ship, which left a week earlier. But in that time, she's had a chance to think about all this. You know what I mean? So this will give you things. Instead of just beginning the scene at Cyprus when you come in, you'll have things going for you. I've got to find him now. I want to see him. The fact that she was put on another boat and not on the one that he was on. And by the way, we have to have, that has to be clear for us. Because it's asked, why is she on one ship and he on another and Cassio on another? Well, Cassio could certainly be on another ship. They have a few ships going, and he would be in charge of the one he's on. Okay, Othello's in charge of the one he's on. Now, how about the one with Iago and Desdemona and Emilia? Well, think about it. They want to get over there as quickly as possible. And what they want to get over there with are the men, the fighters, and the artillery, which now Cassio goes. So the ship that would go first would be, the two ships that would go first would be Cassio's and his, Othello's, because that's where the men are, that's where the other ship would have soldiers on it too, but not as many, a smaller amount, and other people, the people who serve the food, the this, the that, the ones who will, who will help in the field of battle, but don't do the fighting. We got to get those two ships right away. So she has a week to get her things together, etc., etc. Also, they wouldn't want her to be part of the battle, because when he goes over there, the Turks may be there already. We don't know. And there's going to be a fight as soon as he lands. There may be a fight in the water. They did fight then. They had cannon. And they fight. So you see what I'm driving at. Now, none of this is given to us. None of this is even a hint to that. Rather than that, the scholars get into a whole thing of why is it this way, and they can't figure it out, and they go crazy, and it's something wrong with the author. It's never them, it's always the author. Then he says to Duke, the senator, you must await tonight. Now, he didn't know necessarily it was going to be tonight. Like, in other words, in an hour. It's this, because then he says, tonight, my lord, this night, not tomorrow night, so we should be clear. Now, we're in the morning now, but the morning is night. We all use that term. So it's like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and what they're saying in effect is you will leave at about 3 3:15. So he's, but then the Duke says, and this line is misinterpreted. He says at 9, by the way, the I would be like, it's like in, it's a cut in. It's like at 9 in the morning. He says at 9 in the morning, here we'll meet again. Okay. He doesn't mean all of them. He means the senators and the others. Because if we look closely at what he says here. He says, Othello leads some officer behind. Now that will be Iago. And he shall our commission bring to you. Now obviously, if they're going to come back here, they're going to bring a commission. They would come back and get the commission. Iago's going to wait here. take the commission within a half hour. They'll write out the papers for Montano, etc. That he's the new governor, etc. And things like that, and other things he has to do. And then he'll bring it to Othello within the hour, and then Iago will stay with her, and Emilia will bring Emilia, and then Othello's gone. The thing I was driving at is his response. He says, "You must await." Great lines here in terms of the time. It's beautiful. "You must await tonight." Tonight, my lord. This night. This night. And then what's his line? He comes right in, "with all my heart." Well, now, he has to leave. I don't say to him to say, "Well, wait, can we, how about a night with her and then I'll leave?" Huh? No, you can't. This one. But he doesn't have to say, "Oh, wow, great, I'm ready to go." I mean, I know you're ready to go, but a little feeling, a little consideration, even fake it.
Especially she's saying this night.
And she's saying this night. So there's a reason. The author is telling us something here. This night? Huh? Now, again, it's interesting. In the quarto, in terms of editing, it's how I decide on editing, is they don't have this in. But anyway, so that's another thing. So she's jarred by that now. I mean, he's ready to go. But now, good, wonderful, goodbye. Get my stuff packed, let's go, And he's kind of patronizing to her, too. He says to her at the end, "My Desdemona, must I no, not that, I don't mean that. Come, Desdemona, I have but an hour of love, of worldly matters and direction to spend with thee. We must obey the time." I think that leaves much to be desired. I know nobody's perfect, but there's a real problem there. So these things are all important. You're going to use all these things, now not to hate him, but to be concerned more about the relationship. Another line. Can't let anything pass. He says, this is a classic. I mean, in terms of the play, we hear it over and over again, but it's the first time that we hear it in the play. First time. You're going to be hearing it 100 times after. And that is, Othello says, "So please your grace, my ancient, a man he is of honesty and trust." Honesty and trust. You're going to hear that tied to Iago throughout the play. Cassio, he says it, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, or 10 times in the play. Othello says it in the temptation scene alone, when he's saying to him to tell me what's on your mind. He says, "I know you're honest, you're this, you're that, so why are you acting so strange?" On and on it goes. Even Desdemona has a line. So I think it's mentioned about 40 times in the play, the reference. So we have to ask, why is this? They do discuss it. And the consensus seems to be that the reason they refer to him, or he does, as being honest, is because he's outspoken, because he's blunt, because he jokes, he's a regular guy, So if he's a regular guy and he drinks and he pours around, you can trust him. Which is true, a lot of people interpret that way. But that's not what we're talking about. Othello says a man he is of honesty and trust. He's not saying he's blunt. He's not saying, because I'm going to take what these scholars are saying, and what they're saying is, what he means there is, you can trust him and he's honest because he's blunt, he's outspoken, he's a big drinker, he likes the women, he tells dirty jokes, he's this, he's that, he's a regular guy, honestly. No. What Othello is talking about, obviously, well, what would he be talking about? He's worked for Othello for years. Obviously, he is honest in his work. In other words, as the ensign, his job would be to pay the troops. History lesson here, but it is important, even to this day, that these people are notorious for stealing money and stuff like that. They take some, you take some. By the time the troops get it, they have this much left, or people die and they take the money from the guy that's dead. They don't tell him that he's dead. All this kind of stuff. Now, obviously, Othello could manipulate, probably, maybe get away with it. Othello wouldn't know, but he doesn't. In other words, he is honest and trustworthy. He pays the troops all their money. He doesn't take a few bucks off the side. Oh, he gets his money from Rodrigo and people like that. But he doesn't cheat the troops. And he's a fighter, and they know in the battlefield he's going to be there, etc., etc., etc. This is very important because it's referred to over and over in the play, and it becomes cheap and like a cliche, a joke, if we don't know where it's coming from. And so he has a reputation that's based on rock. This guy is solid. There is no challenge to him, really, that kind of thing. It does not puff up his will in any way, that kind of thing. And then we get into another thing. Why does he do what he does now? Oh, we talk about his motivation and the thing about him being cuckold and he suspects he is, and et cetera, et cetera. But they say, why now? Well, that's like asking any time, why does a man or a person commit a murder or do some atrocious deed if they're 35 years old? What have they been doing for the last 34 and a half years? Why now? That's not a good question.
Is it like honor among thieves? I mean, he won't steal from his fellow soldiers. I mean, he absolutely, they're his kitchen, but fuck everybody else.
No, I'd like him to be really honest and
well, he can't be if he's taking, he's taking
money from Rodrigo
right away. I mean, he isn't.
But Rodrigo is still giving him the money. It's not that he's stealing.
No, but he's giving. Yeah, but he's also giving Desdemona. He's looking at those as false,
Yeah, that.
So he is.
Yeah. Well, what you use there is that he's never manipulated like this before in terms of another person, in terms of Rodrigo. He has manipulated a little bit, but never, ever, and up to now too, in the service. Okay? In other words, troops, everything that Othello knows in his professional life, as a soldier, as an ensign, etc., on the field of battle, he's 100%, and he really is. So off the field, it's like maybe he goes to a whorehouse, maybe he does this, and we could say, well, his morals are, well, whatever. Well, yeah, he's not going to evaluate him that way. He evaluates him in terms of the work. And it's interesting, because Iago has a hard profession. He's under a lot of pressure. 9 months, and we were talking about that, remember, a week or so, that they don't get paid what they're supposed to, it's like unemployment shit. And it won't make it. They want to get off the war so they can, And also, in that day and age, in a lot of days and ages, the people who paid the troops, it was notorious. They were notorious for, the Spanish sacking of Antwerp. And because the troops did not get paid. And there was no reason, they weren't taking it out, they just took it out on the people there simply because they were so frustrated. But it was something that happens over and over and over historically among the French, among the Spanish. And they had money. It wasn't that they just, they were manipulating and taking it for themselves. Iago doesn't do that. And certainly there'd be a lot of respect for Iago among the troops because they know he's a fighter. So when they're out in the field, he's not, back in home somewhere. He's out there with them. So that's honest. That's honesty and trust. You can count on him in the field. He never backs down. So there's a lot of good things going for this guy. The more we have, the more real it makes the character and the play, and the more real it makes all these people who constantly say how honest he is and how,
That would also make him even more infuriated that he wasn't given the status that,
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, the turning point in the sense that we do have to ask the question that what made it come out now? But we're not asking what made it come out. There's a difference. If you say after 35 years he did it now, why? There's nothing to indicate it prior to this. Well, he's been busy fighting wars. He's done a very good job. He's helped Othello in terms of planning, the way his mind works. But the thing is, why does this happen now? Because obviously a few things have happened now. One thing, of course, is he didn't get the lieutenancy. And he feels, obviously there's been a frustration building in him. He considers himself superior to just about everyone. The only people he's not superior to are people he hasn't met yet, and when he meets them, he'll be superior to them. So, there's nothing he can't do better than anyone else. He hates to be ordered by anyone, and of course Othello does have authority over him. He hates that. He doesn't like foreigners. He has that attitude about him, which would be so typical of his type. That anybody else is inferior, not just someone dark, just a foreigner. Rodrigo is like that too. But we must remember something. We're not asking the question, and this is where they make the mistake. They say, why does Iago embark on, and here's what he begins to embark on, this, which ends with the death of Desdemona, Othello, he'll die himself, Rodrigo. That's not at all what he embarks on. What he embarks on at the beginning has nothing to do with, it's nothing to do with killing. He has no idea to kill anyone. He has no idea to have Desdemona killed. That is not his intent. That's where you get thrown. If you get into that trap, you've got to justify right now when the play opens why he's embarking on all these horrible things he's going to do. No, he's embarking on waking up Rabancho, on hurting the marriage, on humiliating Othello, maybe having the marriage annulled, making things difficult for Othello. He's like a little kid getting back, he's a kid, and it's like, it starts like that, and then it gets a little better. And pretty soon he's throwing punches very well. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, the thing is, that happens as the play progresses. So we have to ask another question. Why does it progress? Because Iago could cut it off at any time in the play. Look, there's a turning point. The turning point is when he gets into the middle of the temptation scene, and Othello goes and grabs him and tells him, if you're lying, that, you will pray for the day, you will rue the day. It's at that point, and that point only, that he realizes there's no one that dies. He's got to follow through. He didn't intend to, but he has to. We'll get to that. But the thing I'm driving is always keep in mind with Iago that this is not his intent. But again, we do have to ask the question, though. He does progress up to the temptation scene. He does get, in his machinations, they do get bigger and more, just more ambitious. Why? And to save time, the answer would be it's like a narcotic. Think of it that way. In other words, he doesn't know what's going to happen when he does these things. He knows he wants to get back in it, so he's lashing out, okay. But then he finds, and we'll find all those moments in the play, where as he's doing it, he feels good. It's not like a rush. Oh, that was good, I like that. Wow. And then he goes, with Brabantio. That's the first time it happens. When he starts yelling at Brabantio, and Brabantio starts responding, and he makes a fool out of Brabantio. And he has Brabantio maneuvered. And then at the end of the scene, when he gets ready to leave, he feels great. And then he rushes off to Othello. Why does he feel great? Now, why is it a narcotic? See, I won't stop that. You've got to keep asking questions to go deeper and deeper. Narcotic isn't enough. That's fine. It's an opera. It's wonderful. But why is it wonderful? Because it satisfies his need for that constant rejuvenation of self-esteem. The thing he says about, and the thing about having power over people. He's always wanted power.
Your analogy about the fire is a real good one. You start jabbing and then you go in for the kill, because there definitely is a smell. You do smell blood. You taste it. Something clicks. If you watch a fighter or performers go on to the next level, and this adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
There's something physically that happens, that's exciting.
And he's never done it before. Remember, though, that's the thing. He's never done this before, but he's fully capable of it. He didn't even know it himself. He's finding out things. Because if he knew all this, then how could it be a narcotic? He knows about narcotic. He's had this feeling before. He's done this, he's done that, and it felt good. Obviously, he has never had the experience of being involved in a thing like this. Because if he knew how good it felt, he would have done it a long time ago. But he's too busy killing people. That was good too. But not the narcotic that this is. This is like, wow. And so you have to ask yourself how it feels to him. You as the actor or actress, when you're doing that role or another one in a situation like that, why does it feel good? How does it feel? What does it do to him? Does it go to his head? Is his whole body? I mean, his legs are stronger than they've ever been. Everything feels so wonderful. So, okay, there's one other thing, and that is that line that Brabantio has. Look to her more if thou hast eyes to see. She has deceived her father and made thee. And they always say that in the temptation scene, he brings that up, Iago. He reminds him of the fact that she put this act on for her father, and so he gets it. Iago hears this line. But they make a mistake there. And that is, yes, Iago hears this, and he uses it, but the thing is, this is not what Othello refers to in the temptation scene. What he refers to is something that's completely lost track of. And that is a line earlier. It deals with the same thing, but much, much stronger. I'm talking about Brabantio's on 18, when he says, a maiden never bold. That whole speech, and I'm not going to go into that again now, we worked on that. But in that speech is where he has that rush inside of him, that insecurity, and he feels, and that's why he calls to have her brought here. He didn't intend to have Desdemona at the Senate to testify. That speech, as I said before, makes him very insecure, and he has doubts all over the place because of everything Brabantio says. And what I'm saying is that now the actor playing Othello, that would be the key speech for him to refer to. It's longer, it's more detailed, and it's a pivotal area in the scene. More important than what Brabantio says, much more, than what he says later. The other one is for Iago. Iago doesn't hear the first one, he hears the other one. But they both hear. And again, the same feeling. So what I'm driving at is, we have an opportunity for Othello to have the same feeling that he has in the temptation scene, in this scene, which is like light years away. It will appear. It's nothing. That's what I'm driving at. It's not at all. That's the same Othello in that scene. He hasn't gone through a metamorphosis. It's the same guy. It's just the situation is different. That's what I'm driving at. And we can have it here. He has no lines. Well, he does have lines. It comes out in his speech. And he says, I do beseech you, send for the lady. That's like a panic line. It comes out of him. He realizes he must have her here so he can hear. He can be reassured. I'm mentioning that now very vividly because I'll remind you of it when we get to the temptation scene, of course. But it should be on your mind now because it relates to what happens at Cyprus, the arrival. Okay. I'm going to do that one more time. Just up until Iago, Rodrigo, and then we'll go into Rodrigo. The I would be underlined just because it is important. And the other I is too, Othello's I. Or I, there's music there. I mean, music, but it's emotional. There's a break after I, and then she says, I would not there reside to put my father in patient thoughts, and then that should be a run-on, in impatient thoughts by being in his view. And then a break. Now we get to the view. And now her speech is going to be, it's more of a struggle here. Most gracious view. Another break. To my unfolding, lend your prosperous ear. Another break. I want to get a lot of breaks there, so emotionally it's not easy for her to just go in and, she's trying to find the words that will give her the permission to ask. She's not asking it. She's asking for the permission. And let me find a charter in your voice, and that should be a run-on, to assist my simpleness. What would you, Desdemona, that I did love the more to live with him? My downright violence and storm of fortunes may trumpet to the world. That should be a run-on. My heart subdued. And here, as with several others, it's optional. It can be a run-on, or it could be, I would have a run-on, but it could also be a break after subdued. But anyway, my heart's subdued even to the very quality of my Lord. I think it works a little better if it's a run-on. Makes it a little bit stronger. I saw Othello's visage in his mind, and to his honors and his valiant parts did I my soul and fortunes consecrate. That should be a run. So that, dear lords, if I be left behind, break. And this also could be optional. A moth of peace. That could be a run-on if I be left behind, a moth of peace, or it could be a break. The idea will be clear either way. And he go to the war, break, and then it sets up. The rights for why I love him are bereft. And then a break, and I, a heavy interim, shall support, and this should be a run-on by his dear absence. And then a break, and highlight the last 5 lines. Let me go with him. So there's a nice break there, and then she asks, the unaskable. Is that a word?
Sounds good.
I do come up with those things. So it's good though. It's good to get into that habit. I think when you're doing Shakespeare, to start to take words, everyday words, and extend them into things people do not use. But it works for you because you'll find them here, and it makes it that much easier to get into the language in a kind of a way. It's good. Let her have your voice. There should be a break there. And then vouch with me, heaven, I therefore beg it not to please the palate of my appetite. Nor to, when we get to that famous line, nor to comply with heat the young effects, so that's tied together. Nor to comply with heat the young effects in my defunct and proper satisfaction. So that whole thing, and that's a run. The whole thing is together. But to be free and bounteous, 2 syllables. But to be free and bounteous to her mind. And again, a note about the syllables. You may think some strange now. We'll be doing it slowly. As you get into these things, I promise